Welcome to QX Church for Life of Adventure number 6. This is the grand finale of this series. So we're going to just jump right in. Much of adventure is just cooperation with God's truth. That there are things that simply are true. God made them true. And so much of adventure is just cooperating with that. Stop fighting against what's true and start looking for what's true and looking for what you can do with what's true. And it's amazing how many adventures you can have. The Genesis 1:1 principle says that the laws of the universe were designed and engineered perfectly by a loving, wise, omniscient God. Genesis 1:1 just says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So the heavens and the earth, the material and the immaterial, the cosmos, the laws of the universe, physics, was designed and engineered by God. Now we assume that therefore things work the way they're supposed to work. And they work that way for a reason. Now we may not always understand the reason. We may not even like the reason. We might not like that things work the way they work sometimes because we would like them to work the way we want them to work. But we don't have omniscience. We don't know the negative ramifications of, well, what if things work the way we think they should work? But if you think it through, you begin to see kind of this interesting thing going on that fits our presumption that God built the system so it's possible to win. He built the system so we can win. When you look at all the great things people in general, humanity has accomplished, most notably in the last couple of centuries of science and technology, you have to ponder that God's part of the rules have always been in place. It's only recently that people started learning the rules, science, the process of uncovering the laws of the universe, and been playing by the rules, which is technology. Now that we understand how something works, what can we do with it? Now think about this. An airplane. So I have a very good friend, a woman who I love dearly, who just recently flew here from the Midwest. In the Oregon Trail days, that would have been a 6-month journey, but nope, not anymore. Now you hop on this multi-ton tube that has these metal things jutting out on the outside. All these people sit in chairs in the sky, and a few hours later land hundreds or thousands of miles away. Now think about the laws of aerodynamics that allows planes to fly. How long have the laws of aerodynamics been the laws of aerodynamics? How long has the science that makes planes able to fly been true? We just didn't know it was true. And we didn't have the technology to be able to exploit that existing truth. Would it have been possible if you take a plane and you somehow travel back in time 500 years? Would the plane still be able to fly? If you travel back in time 10,000 years, would the plane still be able to fly? So if somewhere along that trip there's a 1-hour temporal disruption and it's going to pop back to the age of the dinosaurs and then pop back well before it's time to land, would the plane still fly? Or did the laws of aerodynamics that allow aerospace technology to exist, did the rules only come into existence in the last 100, 150 years? No, the rules have always been there. We've just figured out the rules. That's the science. And we figured out how to play by those rules. That's the technology. And now we can take off from somewhere in the Midwest, and a handful of hours later, we can land in San Diego. It's amazing that God built the system so planes can fly. Something that's in the news lately is one of the men who walked on the moon has recently died. We walked on the moon! The moon! using less computing power than the average American has on their smartphone. A lot of the math was being done with slide rules and being done in people's head and on paper. It's amazing when you think about what we can do when we learn the rules and play by the rules. And science and technology is a fantastic illustration of this. What are the rules? The discovery of the rules is science. How do we play by the rules? Playing by the rules is technology. When you can play by the rules in a consistently duplicatable way so that you can win. If we define getting a multi-ton hunk of metal in the air to travel at hundreds of miles an hour as a win, how often is humanity winning worldwide every single day? And if we can learn the rules for the adventures in our own life, if we can look at life as we live it, at the level we live it at, where we can employ various technologies, psychological technologies, physical technologies, is apply the knowledge, what adventures can we have? God has goals and plans for you. God has goals. God has plans. Now, because God so treasures free will, God treasures free will so much, he was more willing to die than to not give man free will. He was more willing to sacrifice his son to be torn in two than he was to not give humanity free will. So just because God has a plan for you, just because God has a goal for you, doesn't mean he's going to get his way. Because there's an interaction here. Philippians 1:6 says, "He who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus." God has his goal, and he is constantly doing his part. Now that doesn't mean we're always doing our part. Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future." Now, in context in Jeremiah, it's a long-term plan for captive Israel. Consistent with God's character, it's also a long-term plan for his people generally. How much of it do we get to have while we're here? Well, that's in large part up to us. So here's the basic deal. Cooperate with God for earthly adventure. We could wait for eternity for heaven. We could just say, you know, I'm just going to live in hell here, and when I die, then I'll live in heaven. I want as much hell as possible. In fact, I think living in hell is so important, I'm going to make sure I bring it to the people around me. That way heaven will seem that much more awesome, won't it? Of course not. That's not what we want to do. We could decide to walk out some portion right here, right now, of heaven. Philippians 3:14 says, "I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." That this is pressing on. I'm doing something. I've got a goal. I've got this prize that I'm after. Now, there's the prize, salvation. Christ paid for salvation on the cross. He did his part. This is you press forward. You reach for that prize, that heavenly prize. How much of heaven can I live right here, right now? How much of heaven can I bring to the people around me right here, right now? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And that's Galatians 5:22 and 23, if you want to find that one. If the fruit of the Spirit is love, if I am loving, I am showing up with a slice of heaven, and I am sharing it with people around me. When I recognize and acknowledge love, I am recognizing and acknowledging a slice of heaven. And when I experience love, I am experiencing a slice of heaven. Joy, same thing. When I am joyful, that is a slice of heaven. Where I can bring joy into the lives of people around me, that is a slice of heaven. And peace, patience, kindness, all of these things are slices of heaven. Now you can flip it to the contrast and consider that that's a slice of hell. You can look at the traits of the enemy, the accuser, the one who wants us judged, the one who wants us unforgiven. And when we participate in that, we're experiencing a slice of hell. We're bringing a slice of hell into the lives of the people around us. And you know what? In this earthly realm betwixt heaven and hell, there's enough hell already without us giving ourselves permission to keep bringing it in other people's lives. Now, if you're a grown-up, you have every right in the world to decide that you are going to live in hell. You have every right in the world to decide whatever hell has found its way to you, that you're just going to stay there. You're going to hold on to it. You're going to treasure your slice of hell. And you're going to cooperate with the enemy in accusation and judgment and unforgiveness and condemnation. But God says there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. We could cooperate with God. We could decide we're going to cooperate with Jesus. And we're going to skip the condemnation. We could decide we're going to believe Jesus when he says, "Judge not, lest you be judged. For by the same measure by which you judge others, so shall you be judged." Now here's an example. I've got some very talented and skilled senior students who are really good at what they do. I think they're very impressive. However, what would happen if when they mess up, not if, when they mess up, because we all do, I jumped all over them and said, "Well, how dare you? You're a black belt. You're a senior black belt. It's your obligation to have that right all the time." And then, in the same class, maybe they see, like, wait a second. You're the master. And we've watched you forget stuff. You're the master. And we've watched you mess stuff up. And if it's a "how dare me" as a sensei, well, how dare you as a master? That's an example of "judge not lest you be judged, for by the same standard by which you judge others, so shall you be judged." If, on the other hand, I remind them when they mess up, and they feel bad about it. Like, of course you mess up. We all mess up. Sometimes the brain just doesn't want to work. Sometimes you just have a bad day. One of my senior-most students, my oldest son, is really good at weapons. Well, he was just having a bad day. He just couldn't seem to remember this form that he's been doing for years. He's been doing this one particular form. It's a sword form. I don't even know for how many years. He's been training for 14 years. I think this form he's probably known for 6 or 8 years. Just for whatever reason, he couldn't think of the moves. He even has the moves written out in front of him, and he just can't think of the moves. Now, do you suppose I was very disappointed in him? I'm looking at him and saying, "Well, how dare you? You're one of my senior instructors. You have to know this. You're not allowed to make a mistake." Of course not. I have those days. The master of the system. 45 years of training this year, and you know what? Sometimes I mess up. Sometimes I do something so bad I manage to hurt myself. It happens. But if I get all judgmental about him over something about which I am also guilty, I am heaping judgment on myself. Jesus goes further and he says, forgive or you will not be forgiven. He says, you gotta let it go. Because if you want to declare that is not something to be let go of, God will say, all right, it's up to you. I was ready to let it go. But if you're going to turn to your neighbor, your brother, your friend, your husband, your wife, your kid, your parent, and say, no, it doesn't get let go. It's all right. You don't want stuff let go. Then when you show up before my throne, your stuff won't be let go. It's up to you. You decided. So forgive, so it will be forgiven. And we can live this slice of heaven out of what God has already made true. And God has made much already true. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Just say that again. If anyone is in Christ, if you are a Christian, you have accepted Christ as your Savior, he is a new creation. Not he may become a new creation. Not he has a chance to become a new creation. He is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. That's 2 Corinthians 5:17, if you want the address on that one. 2 Corinthians 5:21 is, he made him who knew no sin, talking about Jesus, to become sin on our behalf, so that we might become the righteousness of God in him, in Christ. That is true. But there are truths requiring our cooperation. Now, a fundamental truth requiring our cooperation is salvation itself. Jesus died on the cross. But do you have to accept him? You have to at least cooperate enough with God to say, I accept. Now, one big such truth is our old self was crucified with him. It's Romans 6:6. Now, we can still live like that old self. So we are admonished to take it off and put on the new self, the new creation that God has made for us. This is Ephesians 4:22-24. You'll find this. Lay aside the old self. Good, now, wait a second. But if the old self is already gone, if the old self is crucified, well, how do we even have an old self to lay aside? It's because we chose to keep it. God says it's dead. And we say, but I like it. I know how to do this old self thing. I know how to be condemning and self-condemning. I know how to do all these negative loops. I know how to be all judgmental. I know how to take out my pain on other people. I know how to take out my anger on other people. I know how to use my fear to be able to just do an enormous amount of damage to the lives around me. I know how to do this. I'm comfortable with this. I know how to do all these negative, hurtful, nasty things to myself. I know how to do that. I'm comfortable with this. This whole world of sin and walking in the ways of the devil and accusation and judgment, that's comfortable to me. It's how I grew up. God said that's crucified. God says it's gone. God says you're a new creation. We're the ones that say, no. I'll take the new creation later. I'll take the new self later. You know, when I get to the pearly gates, then I'll take on the new self. But Ephesians 4, and find this in 22-24, there's a bit more embellishment in there. It says, lay aside the old self. Stop living in this thing that God has declared dead. And put on the new self. It says, you are a new creation. Live like it. You were adopted as a true son of God. The King of all creation has adopted you as a true son. Live like a prince of creation. God Almighty has adopted you as a daughter of the King of all creation. Live like a princess of the universe. We are joint heirs with Christ, the crown prince, the heir to the throne. And we are joint heirs with him. God has allowed us to call him Father. Not stepdad, not adopted dad. He doesn't go like, oh yeah, that's my kid. He's adopted. He says, no, I brought him into the family. This one's mine. And we like to say that, our Father who art in heaven. But do we live like your Son that is in earth? I am a stranger in a strange land. I am not of this world. But do I live like it? Do I live like a son of the King? Do I have those adventures? Do I bring a slice of my Father's kingdom to this world? Do I bring love into this world? Do I bring joy into this world? Am I neutral? I neither help nor hurt, I'm just sort of here? Or do I do damage? Now, I'm going to be perfectly blunt here. All of us do all of it. I believe none of us is so bad we never get any of it right. And I also do not believe any of us is so good we always get it right and never get it wrong. And I believe for most people, most of the time we're pretty neutral. Not everybody, but for most people, most of the time. If I'm sitting at home watching a program on television, if I'm curled up on the couch with a good book, I'm really not having much of an impact anywhere, in either direction. And I think that's most of life. But where we interact with people, generally speaking, we're either a net plus or a net minus. We're either adding a slice of heaven into their lives or we're adding a slice of hell. How big that slice is how much love, how much joy, how much peace, how much patience, how much kindness, how much goodness, how much faith, and how much self-control we show up with. In life, we are constantly creating new starting points. Constantly. If I decide I want to craft an adventure right now is my starting point. I can't decide to start yesterday. I can't decide, oh, I've got a plan. Last week, Thursday, what I'm going to do different is, can't do that. This is my starting point. And we are constantly creating new starting points. My starting point right here, right now, is different than my starting point was a week ago last Thursday. Stuff has happened between last Thursday and now. Right here, right now, is all I got. I can't do stuff tomorrow. I can't do stuff yesterday. I can only do stuff today. I can only act in the now. I can't undo yesterday. And I can't do tomorrow. I can only do today. If I want to do tomorrow, I have to wait until tomorrow becomes today. Now, interesting phrase that I heard, an interesting idea that I want to share. Is one of the greatest lies that people believe is that we always have tomorrow. Now what this means, why it's such a great lie, is there's so many things. We go, well, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it later. Someday. That we look out through an infinite future of tomorrows. We just sort of assume that, well, if I don't get to it today, I'll get to it tomorrow. If I don't get to it tomorrow, I'll get to it tomorrow's tomorrow. It says, but what happens is someday you turn around and you realize you've run out of tomorrows. Sometimes quite by surprise. And you never know when it's your last tomorrow. At any given today, you could lose tomorrow. Now, the most obvious thing is you could die. I could be in my car driving somewhere, I get T-boned, game over. But there's other ways I could also lose tomorrow. I might have this plan that someday I want to ... fill in the blank, whatever it is. And then something happens and you can't do that anymore. Something happens and you can't travel anymore. And all those dreams of that world's travel you were going to make, you can't do that now because of the medical care that you need. And you can only get that medical care in certain parts of the world, and that means you can't really go to the other parts of the world anymore. Sometimes there's things you always thought you'd get around to, and at some point you ran out of time. Things that you always thought that you would eventually do, but then you ran out of money. One of the clips that was that I got to watch recently was the beginning of the movie Up. Anyone remembers the beginning of the movie Up? That they have this jar where they're saving money to go to Paradise Falls. The wife, ever since she was a little girl, has this adventure book of adventures she wants to live. And one of the big adventures, they want to go to Paradise Falls. Well, then, tire gets blown out on the car. So they break the jar open and they have to buy a new tire. And they start saving up again. And then there's an accident and they have to pay for a cast. And so they break open the jar and they pay for the cast. And the years go on. And they never make it to their dream. They never get to do it. And that this jar keeps getting used for other things, and eventually they're old, she gets sick, and she dies. And he sees the painting that she made. The adventure book that had been her dream since she was a little girl. And he realizes we never did it. And the whole theme of the movie from there on is he wants to take her remains, her ashes, to Paradise Falls. They never got her there when she was alive. But my God, I'm going to get her there. You know, and it's a cute story after that. You just watch the opening of that. And we appreciate the love story there. But something else I think really resonates with all of us is this is a couple that had a vision, had a dream of an adventure, and they ran out of tomorrows. Every plan produces outcomes. Sometimes the outcome is success. Sometimes the outcome is failure. Sometimes plans work, we get our goals. Sometimes plans don't work, and we don't get our goals. Sometimes we end up even further back than where we started. But whether failure is final is up to us. It can be final. Failure can be final. Or failure can be a learning experience. Failure can be a chance for us to grow, to step up our game. It's up to us. Remember, we've talked about all things work together. We talked about every failure has in it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Success gives us new resources for the next goal. Learning gives us new insight for the next goal. Either way, we can be winning if we choose to be winning. Now here's an interesting insight. Spectacular goals with spectacular outcomes lead to spectacular opportunities. Spectacular goals with spectacular outcomes lead to spectacular opportunities. Universally true? Probably not quite, honestly. Often, even generally true? I think so. The classic parable of the talents that we use when we teach is Matthew 15, 14 through 30. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to look at the parallel story. It's not the same story. It's a different story. It's probably Jesus talking to a different audience at a different point in time, giving them a different story that resonates with this audience, where the other story he told resonated with the other audience. And there's some interesting things in this version of the story. This is Luke chapter 19, 12 to 27. I'm just going to read it really quick for you. Let me grab my glasses for this. He said, a man of noble birth went to a distant country to have himself appointed king and then returned. So he called 10 of his servants and gave them 10 minas, a chunk of money. So just to make the concept easier, we'll say $1 million. It could be worth anywhere from 10 to 20 or 30,000 up to $1 million, depending upon how you define relative buying power and where it stands based on the percentage of the population. So he called 10 of his servants and gave them $10 million and put this money to work, he said, until I come back. But his subjects hated him and sent a delegation after him to say, we don't want this man to be our king. He was made king, however, and returned home. Then he sent for his servants to whom he had given the money in order to find out what they had gained from it. Now the whole story of the kingdom and the cities that he has and the fact these people didn't want him to be king, I'm sure to the audience they understood what Jesus was talking about. They go, oh yeah, I know that story. I know what that's about. What's your point? Where are you going with it? Says the first one came and said, sir, your mina, your $1 million has earned 10 more. Here's $10 million of profit. Well done, my good servant, his master replied, because you have been trustworthy in a very small matter. Take charge of 10 cities. The second came and said, sir, your mina has earned 5 more. His master answered, you take charge of 5 cities. Another servant came and said, sir, here is your mina. I've kept it laid away in a piece of cloth. I took your $1 million and I stuffed it in the mattress. So you'd have your $1 million when you came back. His master replied, oh, sorry, the servant's not done yet. I was afraid of you because you are a hard man. You take out what you did not put in. You reap what you did not sow. His master replied, I will judge you by your own words. That's what you say. Those words came out of your mouth. So let's assume that what you say is true, and let's look at what you did. So his master replied, I will judge you by your own words, you wicked servant. You knew, did you, that I'm a hard man? That's what you think of me. Taking out what I did not put and reaping what I did not sow. Why then didn't you put my money on deposit so that when I came back I could have collected it with interest? So if what you say is true, what you did is stealing. Because if I take you at your word, the thing that would have made sense was for you to take the money to the bank, put it in an interest-bearing account, and I get back my money, a little bit of interest. And he said to those standing by, take his mina away from him. Take his money away from him and give it to the one who has 10. Sir, they said, he already has 10. He replied, I tell you that to everyone who has, more will be given. But as for the one who has nothing, even what they have will be taken away. Now those enemies of mine who did not want me to be king over them, bring them here and kill them in front of me. It's a pretty serious story. There's some interesting things between this one and the parable of the talents. Now keep in mind, of course, there's a historical context here. There's a way things were done 2,000 years ago. And this story would have made sense to his audience in a different way than it makes sense to us now. Because we don't do our politics this way, but we still do our business this way. You can still take money and put it on deposit at the bank. You can still put certificates of deposit, you can invest it, you can start businesses, you can engage in trade, you can do deals. That part is still true. We don't have so much of the appointing people as kings and appointing people as governors over certain numbers of cities anymore. But hopefully you still get the concept. We don't deal with political rebellion by bringing them in front of you and putting them to death anymore. We may do that in a proverbial way, in a character assassination way. All you have to do is follow social media and see how we treat the other side's politicians. But we don't literally do it anymore. But there's some interesting parallels here. In both parables, 3 servants received a sum of money. Now in this one, a total of 10 servants received a sum of money. 3 of them evidently produced some kind of result. 1 of them produced 10. 1 of them produced 5. 1 of them hid the money. What did the other 7 do? I don't know. Maybe the other 7 went to the bank. We're not told. But it seems like they didn't get in trouble. So whatever they did was okay. But it also seems like they didn't get any cities. So they probably didn't double the money. In both, one servant only preserved what he was given and was punished. In both, 2 servants succeeded in the law of multiplication. They literally multiplied the money given to them in whatever the period of time was that they had the money. And in both, the ones who multiplied the money were called good and faithful servants for successfully applying the law of multiplication. What's distinct in the Luke version is that the returning Lord's reward, the servant that multiplied from 1 to 10 was given 10 cities. So here's some money to invest. Here's some money to do business with. When I come back, I'm going to check in with you and see how you did. As far as we can tell, all the servants knew was money was being divvied up among the servants to do business, to do deals with, and then the boss was going to come back and kind of see how each person's deals went. What each person did, what each person tried to do. And check in on the deal. See how my people are doing. In the Matthew version, 1 was given 5, 1 was given 2, 1 was given 1. In the Luke version, everyone got 1. And the servant that multiplied from 1 to 10 got 10 cities. Cities to govern. The servant that multiplied from 1 to 5 was given 5 cities. Faithful in little, faithful in much. That's the principle here. The money that was given was a test by this king. You show me what you can do with dollars and cents that we can measure success mathematically. But evidently didn't tell anybody the plan. But I've got cities that are going to need governing, and I'm looking for people already on my team to go govern those cities. Now in the Matthew version, 2 of the servants doubled the money. The law of doubling. In here, 1 of the servants 10-folded the money. Started with 1, got 10 times the profit. So that 1 is still there. Like, here's your initial investment, sir. Here's your 10-fold profits. Here's the $1 million you gave me. Here's your $10 million of profit. Here's your 100,000 you gave me. Here's your $1 million of profit. Here's your 10,000 you gave me. Here's your $100,000 of profit. Whatever the dollar value would be that you understand, it was 10 times. The other one went from 1, earned 5. It's pretty spectacular when you think about that. Faithful in little, faithful in much. What you doing with what God gave you? Because God warns you, if you don't do anything with it, you're going to lose it. It's the classic Bible parable version of use it or lose it. If you're just going to hide it, it's going to go away. If you're going to do damage to it, it's going to go away. The people who get more are the people who go out to multiply stuff. So in this whole mix, in all of your adventures, in your life, be a whole person. Be a whole person with a whole life, building a whole future. You are a collection of facets. There's many truths about you. They're all true. They're different facets. And those facets blend into a beautiful gemstone that is you. And this gemstone, these facets, are often expressed in your roles, in your goals, in your skills, in your stories that you live out and that you tell and that you remind yourself of. Your values, your vision, and so much more. Remember to keep your goals in context with that. That there's more than one part of you. I'll tell you something we see a lot. I was just talking to a bunch of women, and this was part of the discussion, is so many women get lost in the role of mother and forget to be wife. Because I was with a fairly large group, and I think it skewed more women than men, at least in my section of the room. And that was part of the discussion, is getting so wrapped up in being a mother that they forget to be a wife. Followed up with, and even for those of us who remember to be a wife, whether we're a mother or not, we're doing mother if we're a mother, and we're doing wife if we're married, that we forget to be ourselves. That we forget that we matter. Not just as a wife, not just as an assistant to the husband. I'm not just here for him to do what he wants. I'm not just here for my kids to do what my kids need me to do. I have to remember, I'm still me. If my husband's gone, if my kids are gone, who am I? And so many women get lost in roles, they lose the rest. They forget you're a whole person. Yes, you want to live out mother well. Yes, you want to live out wife well. But those are only two facets in the gemstone that is you. Be a whole person with a whole life. Don't just be one or two roles whose whole life is locked up in those one or two roles. And build a whole future for your whole self. You have a whole life to live. So build a future that includes you as a whole person living a whole life, and your whole life will include your future history. Now, in this mix of adventures, in this mix of goals, be always content. Be always content. But never complacent. Philippians 4:12. I know what it is to be in need. And I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. This is Paul talking. In my own life, I've been rich and I've been poor. I've lived on a big house in the hill, and I've been effectively homeless. I've gotten to travel, to cruise. I've gotten to sit on the balcony of a cruise ship watching glaciers calve in Alaska. I've gotten to cruise the Hawaiian Islands and the Caribbean. I've gotten to walk in Tulum, an ancient Mayan city resort near Cancun. I've gotten to do and see a lot of spectacular things. I've had multiple days in my life where I get to go see 2 really high-end shows. One of the highlights is I was in Las Vegas. I got to see Siegfried and Roy when there was still a Siegfried and Roy. And then walked down the street to the Bellagio and saw Cirque du Soleil O, when those were the 2 most expensive shows in Las Vegas. And had the buffet at the Mirage. It was a pretty expensive and pretty spectacular day. I've also had days where I don't know what I'm going to eat. I've had days where I'm down to my last macaroni and cheese. I don't have any money. And I'm going to have to split this last box of macaroni and cheese between today and tomorrow before I get more money the day after that. A lot of times I made it through some of those years because my mom would go make what now would be a Costco run. Back then it was a Price Club run. And she'd swing by to see if her baby boy was doing okay and check out the pantry and check out the refrigerator, and then she'd split her Costco run with me. Half of it would go up to the house where she was sharing it with her husband, and half of it would stay with me all by myself for me to have food. It was funny, I saw more of my mom in the first 6 months after I moved out than I saw of my mom for the last 6 months I lived in her house. I thought that was kind of cute. So I know what it is to be in need. And I know what it is to have plenty. I know what it is to have the kind of budget where I can walk into a dealership, say I want one of those for me and one of those for my wife. This is how much I'm willing to pay, negotiate the deal, and write 2 checks. And walk out with 2 brand new cars. Well, drive out with 2 brand new cars. I've been wealthy enough to do that. I've been wealthy enough to do Hawaii and Las Vegas. I've had a 30-day honeymoon. I've also had those days where I'm trying to stretch the 1 box of mac and cheese. I've also had those days where I'm just really, really happy that I've got my cup of noodles, because that's what I'm going to be living on for the next 2 or 3 days. I've had those days where I'm just kind of nursing a car along because it's going to be a month before I can afford to do anything about that weird knocking noise. I once drove a car with the check engine light on for almost 6 months before I could afford to do anything about that check engine light. Recognizing for myself at any moment the car could just be dead. And I can't even afford to have a qualified mechanic look at it, much less fix it, for months at a time. And you know what? I've had some pretty spectacular adventures on both sides of that equation. I have had spectacular adventures from the depths of poverty. I've had spectacular adventures on the top of prosperity. That's easy. I mean, you're going to go cruise Alaska. You're going to take the inland trip to the Denali Park. That's an adventure. That's easy. But can you have amazing, spectacular adventures? Can you live in love when you're at the bottom? Can you have joy when you're at the bottom? Can you bring love and joy and peace to the lives around you when you're in your pit? Or does it depend on your stuff? Does it depend on success? Does it depend on everything going your way? Does it depend on other people doing exactly what you want them to do without fail, without having a bad day, without having kind of a brain fade week? Or you're going to be pissed off at them, not just a little upset, not even just ticked off. And I say, you're so mad at them that you don't care how much damage you do to them. You're not solving the problem. You're tearing them apart. Sometimes justifying it as I'm trying to solve the problem. But sometimes you can solve the problem in a minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes. But you'll spend 10 times that so that you can blame people. You could do that. Now, most of us get that if you're in the pit, if you're already stressed, you're already burdened, and more stuff like that happens, you'll do that. But you know what I've also seen? I've seen people doing that at the top of the heap too. I was working with this multimillionaire, worth about $4 million. And he was talking about his mastermind group. And as we were talking, he says, you know, we really should have had you in as a speaker probably years ago. Because there's 12 of us in this mastermind group, and we just found out the last one of us still married. Wife just filed for divorce. We're on top of the heap. All of us made our business goals. All of us made our financial goals, and none of us kept our wife. None of us who are parents kept our kids. Some of us went home and we yelled at our wife and our kids all the time. We missed important things. We missed Little League games. We missed soccer games. We missed school plays because we were always busy. And it was always more important. Because they were discontent. They didn't recognize what they had until after it was gone. But they had the money for a great adventure. He could have decided, you know, instead of pursuing $4 million, maybe I could eke by on $2 million and make time to go to Little League games and school plays and dance recitals and piano recitals. Maybe I could scale back some of my big goals and stop yelling at my wife every time I walk in the door. And stop yelling at my kids every time I walk in the door. Maybe I could show up and instead of having them go, oh God, Dad's home. And go, oh my gosh, Dad's home. That maybe if I decided to prioritize my marriage a little bit, to be a nicer husband, to not be so ornery as often as I was ornery, and dismissive as often as I was dismissive, and to treasure my wife the same way I treasured my work. Maybe my wife wouldn't be sitting around going, God, I just hope he doesn't come home early today. God, I hope he doesn't want to have sex tonight. I really don't want that man even touching me. And to find out the only reason the marriage lasted as long as it lasted is because he was gone so long. Because his wife and his kids didn't want him around. Because of how nasty he was when he was. They forgot. Whole person, whole life. They forgot that they had stuff they were ignoring. Now, complacency means not wanting to bother to make anything different. You can be content right where you are. You don't have to be complacent. You shouldn't be complacent. You should be happy and grateful where you are. And merely dissatisfied with letting things stay where they are. There should always be in pursuit of something more. Now here's a metaphor to understand this. You get a kid in first grade. Now if this kid's in first grade, do you want your kid to be happy that he's a first grader? Or do you want your kid to be going, well, yeah, but I'm not in second grade, and I'm not in high school yet, I don't have my college degree, I didn't finish my PhD, and I don't have a career yet in a house, and I mean, you're 6. You're only supposed to be in first grade. Now, on the other hand, what if your first grader says, you know, I think being in first grade is pretty cool. I like first grade. I'm learning all kinds of cool first grade stuff. It's nice. I like first grade. I'd be much happier as a parent. A year goes by. Your kid goes, you know, I like first grade. I think I get first grade now. I'm going to stay in first grade. And I go, oh, you're supposed to be in second grade. And what if your kid decides to stay in first grade another year? And another year? You should be happy and content being in the grade that he's in, but not complacent. A year after first grade, where should your kid be? Second grade. 10 years after second grade, where should your kid be? Graduating from high school, 12th grade. After that, maybe college, maybe not. 2 years after going to college, maybe an associate's, maybe not. 4 years, maybe a bachelor's, maybe not. But complacency says like, I like it here. I'm comfortable here. And here might have been awesome when it was appropriate. Not so awesome if you stay there too long. So enjoy a life of adventure. Adventures come in all forms, all forms. Choose as many adventures for yourself as you can. You decide what adventures you choose. You can choose financial adventures, business adventures, career adventures. But remember, you're a whole person with a whole life. Your whole life might include a husband or a wife. Your whole life might include your kids. Your whole life might include your parents. Your whole life might include friends. Your whole life might include other activities, other parts of who you are. Choose your adventures as a whole person. Choose adventures as a whole person with a whole life. And choose as many adventures as you can. I mean, you decide what the adventure is. And also enjoy the adventures thrust upon you. Sometimes the adventures thrust upon you aren't always fun. Sometimes the adventures thrust upon you, frankly, kind of suck. You might be going along nicely, and you get a really nasty kind of adventure, and it just sucks the life out of you. You're going along nice and it sucks out the energy. And you're just like, oh man. Oh man. You're on your way to your goal and something happens, just sucks the juice right out of you. Trips you up on your momentum. Now you get a different adventure. Now you get to find out who you are. Now you get to find out the kind of partner you are. The kind of person you are. How you handle things. What permissions you give yourself. Whether you think the goal is still worth the price. And whether you're willing to keep paying that price. I just got to watch a husband and wife pull off spectacular. That they are in pursuit of a vision to touch the lives of people and make a difference in this world. And I got to watch them over the course of 3 days to see how they were doing as they were engaged in this huge thing together. Got to hear some stories. Got to talk to mom. Got to talk to dad. Now here's the interesting thing about mom and dad. Mom and dad got divorced when the man was like 2. Mom and dad were both there at his big deal event, his major step forward, together, sitting next to each other in the front row for their son. They've been divorced for 30, 40 years. They came together for their boy. And they helped, they participated, they were there for him. And we got some interesting stories. And I'm watching the wife as she's running around doing all these things. And what I'm seeing in her is how she is saying, I love you, with a glass of water. How she's saying, I love you, by troubleshooting that problem over there. And one of the things that particularly impressed me was the wife had a team of about 12 people. And these 12 people were just in love with this woman. That speaks volumes about her leadership. That she came from such a place of love in her service that even when she messed up, and she admits that she does, that she comes from such a place of love, and more importantly, is recognized as coming from a place of love, that her team just moves in to help fill in the blanks. This is a woman that when they were faced in a moment of crisis, financial crisis, and deciding whether they're going to walk through this door or not, she's the one who told her husband, honey, do it. You deserve it. Because he was someone of such quality, of such caliber, that he was worth believing in, and so she did. He had a demonstrated history that showed he was worth believing in. And no matter whatever her fears might have been, is I know I can count on my husband. I know him as a man. I know he's a follow-through guy. I know he's a get-it-done guy. I know who he is. I know what he can do. I've watched him do it day in and day out for years. He's trustworthy. And because I know he's trustworthy, I will trust him. No matter how scared I am. Because it's not about my fear, it's about his trustworthiness. Now, get other sides of the story too. Then you get people who put blind faith in people. I watched someone basically say, I need money. I don't have a job. I'm just going to ask these strangers to bring me money. And a bunch of them did. I have no idea how much money she got. I know at least 2 people, 3 people that I know of for sure handed her a $100 bill. So at least one person handed her a 5. But I know she got at least 300s because she had this idea that I get it now. I know what I want to do. But here's a problem. Her history shows she doesn't finish. Her history shows she gets inspired. And then she runs out of steam. I was talking to a mom about her son. She came to me because she's struggling. Says, I love my son. I love him. And he desperately wants my support and my encouragement. But I have watched him do this again and again and again. For the first 3 or 4 times, I could back him up 100%. But we're like time 10 or 12 now. He never finishes what he starts. It's really hard because he wants me to believe in him, even though he's shown me 10 times in a row that I can't believe him. Help me. Because here was the deal there. Mom felt he will never succeed if he's not believed in. But he has never given me a reason to believe in him. In fact, he's shown me, he's let me down more than 10 times in a row. And he calls me and asks for my support. How do I do it? How do I say, I believe in you, when he's shown me he's not worth believing in? How can I say, you can do it, when he's already shown me he won't? Well, she decided that she wanted to enjoy this process a little bit more. And she decided, you know, what is true about him? When he was born and you held him in your arms, had he accomplished anything? All he knew how to do was cry, sleep, and poop. And you loved him. You believed in this little bundle of potential. So he's failed. Let me ask you a different question. Do you think he can, but he won't? Or do you think he can't? Because, well, I know he can. He just doesn't. Like, well, you can back him up with that. Honey, I know you can do this. You can do this. I know how good you are. I know you can. Now go do it. So I can do that. So now I can tell you, I know you can. There are things you can do that's beyond what you've ever done. You can. Will you? Now, you're not going to be perfect. You're going to have moments where you blow it. You're going to have hours and days and bad weeks and even bad months and, heaven forbid, but very likely, a bad year or two. Gonna do the adventure anyway? And say, you know, I can. And because I know I can, I will. Maybe I make it. Maybe I don't. But it's not going to be because I just gave up. And if I do give up, I'm not going to blame anybody. It's not mom's fault. It's not dad's fault. It's not the economy's fault. It's not my husband's fault, not my wife's fault, not my kids' fault. They're not the ones that decided I was going to stop. I am. That means I'm also the one that can decide I'm going to keep going. I watched both a young man and a young woman in tears, collapsed on the ground sobbing because their parents absolutely did not believe in them. Their parents would not back them up. Their parents said, you're stupid. You're a failure. Give it up. When are you going to get a clue, you stupid, stupid kid? And you know what these two young people did when they were done crying? They got up and both of them decided we're moving forward. Doesn't matter if they believe in me or not. What matters is, do I believe in me? What did God make true? Enjoy adventures. Enjoy your adventures of your plans. Just the planning process by itself is an adventure. Enjoy the adventure of the processes, even though sometimes it's hard. When someone's building big muscles, you got to lift heavy weights. And of course, enjoy the adventures of destinations, of goals you succeed at, goals you even get close to. Enjoy adventures of relationships, however passing they might be. You can enjoy a momentary pleasant exchange with a cashier at the store as you're making a purchase and heading off, and your whole relationship is 90 seconds. But you have fun with it. You bring a slice of heaven to them, and you enjoy a slice of heaven from them for those 90 seconds. Enjoy adventures of personal growth. Who am I? Who can I be? If I'm going to step up to a higher self, a better self, find out who my highest and best self is, and walk out in that direction to be more loving, more joyful, more peaceful, more patient, to be kinder, to be more good, to be more helpful, to make more of a positive difference in the lives around me, to walk things out in faith, knowing what I know, and that if what I know is true, logically, this has got to work. Enjoy adventures of contribution, where what you do makes a tangible difference in some way, shape, or form around you. Contributing to your husband, contributing to your wife, contributing to your kids, contributing to your friends, contributing to your community in some way, shape, or form. Enjoy adventures of love. Enjoy that love connection. Enjoy adventures of experiences. Enjoy adventures of overcoming. Now, to enjoy an adventure of overcoming, you know what you need? You need a challenge. Enjoy adventures of solving problems. Means you need problems to solve. Enjoy adventures of troubleshooting. Means you need trouble to shoot. Enjoy adventures of learning. Enjoy adventures of identity. What I mean by that one is enjoy adventures that show who you really are, that let you show up as your highest and best self, which I believe is who you really are. Putting on that new self, being that new creation that God already made true. And just say, God, I agree with you. I'm going to be that new creation you made true already. I'm going to put on that new self. I'm taking on that old self. You crucified the old self. I'm not dragging that carcass around with me anymore. I'm going to lay that aside. Now I'm putting on the new self. I'm going to walk out what God made true, not what the devil says is true. I'm going to walk out what God sees in me, not what the devil sees in me. I'm going to walk out how big I am that overcame all the crap in my past. I'm not going to live the crap. I'm going to be that person with that strength and the wisdom and the resilience that transcended my pit. I'm not going to live in the pit. As sure as heck, I'm not going to be taking it out on the people around me. I will not be the source of hell in any life around me if I can help it. Will I be perfect? Of course not. Will I blow it sometimes? Of course I will. But I don't give myself permission to do it. When I do it, it's because I messed up. And I will pick myself up, dust myself off, and I'm going to give that thing another try. Sometimes it'll hurt so bad I might be on the ground sobbing for a while. I might have to pull over on the side of the road, call my mom. I might need a long hug from a loving friend who'll just tell me, you know what? I know who you are. You've been showing me who you are for a decade. You got this. Go ahead and stay down for a little while. Catch your breath. But when you got your breath back, you can do this. You got this. Enjoy adventures in every form of adventure that God may bless you with. And live a life of adventure. Live a life of adventure. I'm going to close with this. Repeating what I just said. You choose. You decide to live a life of adventure. God bless you and thank you.